Hello, welcome everyone to this third session of Sportv Series Latin America. Thank you to everyone who has been participating in this, as Ariel was saying earlier this morning, second edition of the event, first virtual version of the event. We're very happy with with the participation level, so we hope that you are enjoying it. This third session of this morning, early evening, depending on where you're joining us from, is about online video sports piracy threats in Latin America. That's the title of this session. I'm sure many of you have been attending our events in the past. It's an issue that is not the first time you hear about it. And there's a very good reason why we keep coming back to online sports piracy. And that reason is that this is an issue that is not going away. It's a very persistent issue. It's affecting every single actor of the value chain of sports TV, because it affects the sports right holders, the TV networks, sort of the distributors of the content, the teams themselves, the OTT platforms covering sports. So really we want to understand three things, and I think that's the main reason for this panel. We want to understand first the scale of the problem. We want to understand why this is happening, and we perhaps most importantly want to understand how it can be combated, what can be done to help fix this problem. So to do that, we have an expert panel with people joining us from 3 different continents, 5 different countries. So I will introduce each of them. Let me start with Hernan Donnari. Hernan is the CEO of Global Sports Rights Management, or GSRM. He's based in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Hernan has over 20 years of experience in the media and sports industry. Most notably, he comes from Fox Sports. He was formerly the executive vice president for Fox Sports Latin America, and again, a lot of experience dealing with sports rights acquisition. He was involved in the bidding process and successful bidding process at that for the acquisition of the sports rights for Argentinian football by Fox Sports, working together with Turner recently. Secondly, we have Roberto Kenny. Roberto is the general manager of KMG Group. KMG stands for Kenny Media Group. He's joining us from Mexico. KMG is based out of Miami. He's, because of the pandemic, joining us from Mexico. He's a consultant and an advisor for the broadcast industry, and again, former experience working for TV Azteca, one of Latin America's largest broadcasters, always, again, working especially in sports. Cameron Andrews. Cameron is the legal director of Anti-Piracy at beIN Media Group. He's based out of London, UK. Cameron is a lawyer, and interesting, he has past experience also representing the recording industry. So again, a lot of experience working in genres where piracy tends to be an issue, sports now, the recording industry in the past. Guilherme Guimarães is the VP of Marketing Brazil for DAZN. He's joining us from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Guilherme oversaw the marketing strategy for the launch and currently the growth of the DAZN platform. DAZN, as most of you will be familiar, one of the world's big names when it comes to sports and live sports and OTT. Last but not least, Brad Parobek is the Senior Vice President of Sales for the Americas at Friend MTS. Friend MTS, for those of you not familiar with the company, is a global provider of channel, content, and platform protection services. Brad is joining us out of Denver, Colorado in the States, and he's a former Nokia and CSG international executive. So welcome everybody. As you can see, a lot of experience in this topic. This gentleman will help us understand what's going on. I'd like to start with our three Latin American representatives. And I'd like you to think of where we are right now at this point in time. What do you think are the main challenges when it comes to sports piracy and sports rights? And I will start that question addressed to Roberto.
Okay. First of all, thank you for the invitation to be here. Gracias, Juan Pablo, and thanks. It's an honor to be sharing the panel with all of you guys. Juan Pablo, you mentioned 3 points: scale, why this is happening, and how can we address this thing. And we all know the scale is huge. Not only on the rights buying or purchasing business, in that sense that we have experts over here, but also there is a part that it's very it's not common to touch about. But for example, the production of the events per se. And there are businesses like mine, like host broadcasting for many events like the Pan American Games and others that we do. And we manage Pan Sports OTT, the organization, and the Pan American Sports Organization OTT. That it's owned by the 41 Olympic committees of the continent. And this organization, for example, sells the rights of the Pan American Games, and we are also involved into the production and distribution of the games. So piracy affects us a lot, and I will come to that later. Why this is happening? Obviously because of the technology advances, but also in our continent because of a cultural situation. Because in our countries, I would say in Mexico and in Argentina and Chile, but especially in places that have not had the resources in the past to access rights legally, it has become a practice, not from now, but since a long time ago, to access those events or those rights without paying. And it's very easy for them to say, well, I don't have the rights, but I deserve to have this material. And how to manage this, it's also very, very difficult, because you're talking about different cultures, different ways of accessing the events. The technology is way ahead sometimes, or while the lawyers are taking their positions and their strategies to watch it in every region, technology advances. And it's very, very hard to put in context and in synchrony the loss of the different countries, the needs of every business involved into the chain, as you would say. So it's a huge challenge. But I'll put you into this panel, for example. Right now, with the pandemic, for example, these new technologies of remote production, for example, have exploded also. And before we were being worried about just selling the rights and taking it, somebody was going to take the feed that was produced by the host broadcaster, the international feed. But at this moment, you can make a whole broadcast quality production from a stadium with the technologies system, with 2 or 3 attendees or 4 attendees into an event, and would reduce the cost over there, and they would have the production and obviously be able to manage resources like selling and graphics and sponsoring internally, that it's growing into this piracy situation. So some of these piracy places or entities that provide services, now they're working as professional as any broadcaster or OTT in the world over there. So it's a huge challenge. So pass it over there. You have your microphone is mute, Juan Pablo.
For that, one of the other pandemic new situations. Hernan, what do you want to add in terms of existing challenges that you're seeing again?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation, and an honor to share this panel with all you guys, actually. Roberto mentioned one of the aspects, the educational aspect, the culture, and it's part of what we are, right? I think we need to improve on that. We need to let people know that piracy is bad. That sounds simple and sounds like naive, but sometimes people do not really know whether they are, because sometimes they pay for it. Sometimes they are paying a fee that is a piracy, but they tend to think that given they are paying, that should be some kind of legal business behind it, and sometimes it is not. Another thing is a framework, a regulatory framework that I think that most of the region does not have. On top of that, beyond the framework, you have to be able to enforce the framework to be respected, and that implies laws, but also implies people understanding what is about piracy, what is the impact, why it is important to fight piracy, why when someone's avoids to pay a fee for watching a game, it's impacting in the whole industry. It's impacting on the club, it's impacting on the teams, it's impacting on the players, and the level of the sport as a whole thing. The whole industry is impacted when it comes to piracy. And finally, and last but not least, again, technology. There's a lot of tools that need to be developed, that need to be taken into account. In our side, GSRM is the owner of the Brasileirão rights in the world. So we are very deep into piracy because part of our business is try to avoid people from stealing the content we produce, and avoid our clients to feel like they are paying for something that they are not getting, because we sell sometimes we don't. We sell exclusivity, or we sell a specific windows for a specific platforms for the content that we are selling. One thing that I want to finish with this, one thing that is always not considered as important as it is the existence of a legal options for every territory. This is very important and sounds stupid, but if you don't give every consumer a legal option, this person will consider that he or she has the right to steal it. So it is very important that for every territory, when you are a right holder, like we are for Brasileirão, that we offer on a worldwide basis an absolutely legal alternative that could be side by side with other options, but on a worldwide basis, it is very important to have a legal option. That's what we do with our OTT, with Fanatis, for the Brasileirão content.
Interesting. Guilherme, what do you want to add in your view in terms of current challenges?
Well, first, just echoing what Hernan and Roberto said, thank you for hosting me. It's a pleasure to be amongst this brilliant group of people. The good thing about being last is because basically these guys have already covered most of the field. So I think one really important thing that Hernan touched base on is education. There is a huge need to educate fans on the impact of piracy. It is a cultural aspect. There's a cultural aspect about it that people don't see as consuming pirate content as a felony. So and they don't understand the impact that this has on the whole industry. And then touched that, and then Roberto touched on the stakeholders that are impacted by it. But at the end of the day, it impacts the fans themselves, because if there are people consuming it for free, the people who are paying for it are paying more because there are people consuming for free. If there are more people paying for it, then at the end of the day, this new income or this additional income is going to be used to better the event itself. If you play in Brasileirão, as I alluded to, we're going to be able to keep the best players in Brazil. We're not going to need to sell them to Europe, for example. Mm-hmm. So there are it's a chain impact that happens. The size of it is immense, and I couldn't agree more with Roberto when we said that there is a need for regulation. Because when you, of course, all the rights holders can work together to educate the fan, but it's really difficult to work in a scale when you have, individuals, when you have to tackle individuals. So when you have regulation, you can go to the source of the piracy, the origin of it. So regulation is key to, bring down those pirate signs and bring down those websites or feeds or whatever they're coming from. So I think for me that the two key elements here are education, changing culture, and regulation.
Take I've never heard it, a relationship between the effects of piracy and how that could affect the presence of sports players migrating to other geographies, because the income is relatively there. It's a very good point. And this is the first time we hear
imagine if Brasileirão is more pirated, or Brasileirão or the rights are more pirated than European rights. That means more income is coming to the clubs. I'm not going to say if we, zero piracy in South America or in Latin America.
Neymar and Messi playing here.
Yeah, but still, it's a cycle that you reverse and you help tackle.
Absolutely.
Cameron, beIN Media, I think gives you this ideal insight. I'd like to ask you to provide us with a global perspective of how actually we came to this point, because we started by looking at the present point in time. I'd like you to give us some perspective into how we came into this point, and how do you see from this global perspective that beIN Media Group gives you, how do you see that impacting the LATAM region at the moment?
Sure. So I think the point to make here is that we're talking about internet piracy. And the thing about internet is it's global. The pirates don't have to respect any territorial boundaries. And in fact, the internet is pretty well developed enough everywhere that content in one territory is very easily retransmitted into another territory over the internet. So what's happened over the last couple of years is there's been a big shift online. There's been emergence of new OTT players and lots of participants in the streaming space in the legitimate industry. And they're all still trying to compete and build businesses within an industry that is still regionally segmented. But in parallel, and in many ways they're in front of the legitimate industry, there has been a pirate industry also developing very quickly. And they don't have to, as I said, they don't have to respect any territorial boundaries or licensing arrangements. And so they operate truly on a global and unregulated scale. It is a massive threat to our industry, because it depends, certainly in the world of sports, it depends, and not just sports, all content really, it depends on regional licensing arrangements. Value is derived from being able to offer exclusive licenses within particular territories. And pirates offer their content globally. And so it undermines the whole basis for offering exclusive broadcasting rights. And this, goes right to the heart of our industry and threatens to rip the guts out, if you like, of the value in the broadcast rights that we all depend on.
Brad, let's start by looking at some of the potential technological solutions for this. we've all heard watermarking comes into this form as one of the tools that is used to identify or detect pirates. There's a whole discussion also of how then do you convert that detection into some sort of action to actually block those pirates. What is watermarking? Can you briefly explain the concept and then let us know really what can be done to block the pirates when you detect them?
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for having myself on this panel with everybody. Greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak to our customers in Latin America and our potential customers, and to meet all of you on this panel. Thank you very much. We really like to say it's friend MTS to the rescue. We're the worldwide leader in this area of content protection technologies. Our specialty is to work with all of the entertainment, sports leagues, sports rights holders, and provide them with something that sticks, a solution or a set of solutions such as watermarking and fingerprinting, which are the key layers to video security that is the initial step into combating piracy in Latin America, but really all over the world, because if content is worth producing, it's really worth pirating, because if not, why would anybody produce it? And you look at all the regulations that Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Twitch have on not having illegal content or content that's not original being shown without the proper rights. You then look at what's happening with football right now going on and how popular it is to steal. Our fingerprinting and watermarking technologies, it's the key layer, it's the essential, as I said, to combating this. And watermarking it's an imperceptible overlay to the video, and it can't be removed once it's embedded. And then our technology helps identify the subscriber that's leaked it, that then we can work with the rights owner and the distributor to cut that person off. We don't boast about, at Friend MTS, we don't boast about numbers and percentages of takedowns, because quite honestly, we want to go after the source, and we're able to go after the source to cut them down. It's very, very inexpensive to do. It's high quality. It's not been able to be broken. And we have great success in Latin America and around the globe with these technologies. So as we'll talk about further on, it really takes a village. It takes everybody getting involved to help combat this terrible piracy, because you wouldn't walk into a store and steal a sweater and walk out with it. That's stealing. As it was brought up, education of fans on the cycle, on how it hurts getting the proper players on the field, as well as the need for regulations. And we work with regulators around the globe to help them set policy to combat piracy.
Right. I was mentioning at the beginning of this session that one of the things we'd like to come out from this chat is to have some sort of quantification of what the scale of the problem is. So I'd like to check with a few of them, at least, to see if you are managing or you have any numbers in mind. That the key thing is really to try to understand how much online piracy is impacting the value of TV rights and revenues for the entire industry, really, for the sports association, for the TV networks, for the teams themselves, for the OTT operators like DAZN, Guilherme. Let's start with you, Guilherme, and then we can see if a few of you have some opinions, some values and numbers in mind.
What I can say is the impact that it has on players like DAZN, who's a direct-to-consumer player, is that basically every person who is streaming it illegally or watching it illegally is a potential subscriber who didn't come to the platform officially. And then you basically it will depend on the appeal of the competition. It will depend on the appeal of the rights, territorially speaking. But for us, it's a very straightforward situation, and anyone who's watching it in an illegal way in a territory that we own the rights and we are streaming it officially is someone who should be watching it and paying for it, and might be paying for it as Hernan alluded to, but don't realize that they're paying the wrong rights holder.
Roberto,
yes. Here we are very concerned because, for example, with Panam Sports, it affects us also in the largest market, that is the US, Canada, and Brazil, Mexico, and Argentina together for the rights when we sell the rights and manage all these sports. But I'm going to give you some numbers that come from Muso Cybernetics firm. This is a cybersecurity firm that takes care of this. And by them, they say just in 2018, there were more than 180 billion visits to pirate sports entities worldwide in the web. And just in the US, for example, there were almost 363 million visits to pirate sports websites in the US in January alone of last year. So those numbers, as Cameron said, because of being global and everything, any broadcaster in the world would dream about these numbers, and it's not a single broadcaster can reach those numbers by any chance. So in what I agree totally with what Cameron would say, but one thing is that in some things, I feel that this thing the ship has sailed, because it's already affecting us. For example, for Panam Sports in this sense, or many other rights owners or generators of contents, we see that it's extremely difficult now to sell the rights of what it was. Different, like in the soccer, for example, that you sell rights yearly or by season or by depending on the country and everything. When you sell rights of Olympic Games or Pan American Games or Central American Games and everything like that every 4 years, you can see the changes and the impact complete, and the reduction of the income coming into the organizers. And it is extremely hard, because even though you implement, for example, as technologists, like Brad was saying, that let's talk about the Pan American Games. The organizing committee has to make a lot of productions. There are 51 sports in the Pan American Games, larger than the Olympic Games. And usually you have a banda package of 24 feeds produced simultaneously for those events. You could watermark all of these feeds, but you're talking productions that go above $20 million a production for the organizing committee alone, just the production of that, the distribution. And suddenly the pirates come over there and start giving these feeds for free, not only taking it from the legal streaming or feeds that the organizing committee is producing, but as I told you before, now the technology, the people just go into the stadiums and can create their own host feeds, and that we would not be able to watermark. So it's very difficult, and we see it with our clients, because there's a big reduction of what the offerings of the rights are for these events. They're getting more expensive. For example, years before, as a host, you were not thinking of how the piracy would impact in your production services, into the technology that you have to put not to be stolen, and then into the amount of reduction of income that is coming from your rights. So it's really a paradigm that it's really tough to address.
Right, Juan Pablo, if I could
yes.
just add,
Sure.
there was a report that came out in the U.S. by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in 2019 that piracy alone was a $30 billion annual hit, and it's out there on the U.S. Chamber of Commerce website that people can download that white paper on it. And it is very true that you've got to input the right technology. You've got to have the right protection solutions behind it, because it goes along with the education part of it to your subscribers and to the fans, to the viewers. And we can take down or find a pirated stream within a matter of seconds. Okay, so the importance is to find that and to be able to act on it very quickly, and having the rights, being the owner, being the distributor. And then you can, there's cases every day around the globe that somebody has taken legal action against a pirate, and with the right documentation and the right screenshots and things like that, you're able to build that case to go out and fight against that subscriber or that person leaking it. And it doesn't just have to be out of the computer. It could be if somebody's holding their camera and videoing it, because our technology can figure out what stream it actually was stolen from or taken from and rebroadcasted. So it's very powerful. It's very easy to implement, and it's something that a lot of you on this call are using. But if you're not, there should be the discussion on what's the best solution for your clients.
Cameron, there were some numbers mentioned here. I don't know if you at beIN Sports have a number also in mind in terms of how it's impacting either you in particular or the whole industry as a whole.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, there are lots of numbers get bounced about, and I think one of the surprising things in the industry is that aren't more kind of comprehensive and generally accepted studies being done into the impact of piracy. So we have to sort of cobble together the bits and pieces we see, but what we do see is massive. You know, this internet piracy happens over 3 different mediums. The first is sort of social media. Social media live streaming has provided a very easy means for people to restream content and reach very big audiences. And when piracy on those mediums like Facebook and YouTube isn't controlled properly, it's common to see streams reach hundreds of thousands of users. So there's one indication, but that's actually the area that I find the most promising, because there are means to control that, and I think there is some hope there. Next one is the pirate streaming websites and stuff that happens on the open internet. You know, these sort of streaming websites have been around for a long time, but there's more and more of them, and they reach huge audiences. In MENA, some of these sites are amongst the most popular sites of all websites in the country, and reach absolutely enormous audiences. When you have a look at their Alexa rankings and services like SimilarWeb and see how many hits they have, it's absolutely staggering. The third category, and the one I think is the real business killer, is the subscription IPTV services. Or some regions we call them illicit streaming devices, but it's services that for a very low subscription, in some cases free, like in Asia they tend to be free, but in other places you have to pay maybe only 30 euros or something, you know, up to 100 maybe, and you will get thousands and thousands of channels streamed in very high quality and multiple copies of those channels as well, offering the content from all around the world. The studies that are out there on the numbers of people who have subscribed to these are also alarming. So I know Sandvine puts out information about this from time to time, and they put out some information recently. I think in the US it was something like 8% of customers or internet customers, they believe, based on traffic analysis, are using subscription IPTV, pirate subscription IPTV services. In Europe it was a little bit higher. In the Middle East and North Africa, it's something like 25% of internet customers, according to their research, are using these subscription IPTV services. So it's huge, you know. But it's not surprising, because you know we see lots of anecdotal evidence to support that. You know, just this week I was looking at one particular app, pirate IPTV app, that in one of the app stores had been, you know, unofficial app stores had been downloaded some 10 million times, and it's one of these apps. It's very easy to go onto something like YouTube and find recommendations and videos telling you where to get a TV service from. You know, just Google it. It's easy for anybody to access these services and use them and be taught how to do it. And so it is no surprise that it is growing at such an alarming rate.
And Cameron, just adding to what you just said, these pirate websites, apps, whatever, they have become very sophisticated themselves. So if you Google if you Google specific competition, they will come #1 on Google search. So they have, you know, they have, I'm not going to say mastered, but they have good marketing as well, which is in a way difficult to compete, because we are paying the rights and we invest in marketing, and they only, you know, basically invest in marketing.
Yep. Can I make a comment just on the watermarking? As Brad's spoken a lot about watermarking, I think it's useful to just make a few observations about that from a broadcaster's perspective. So we've invested in watermarking very heavily in MENA and used it, and used Friends as well, and another supplier as product. And I'm a big advocate of it. I think we only have limited tools at our disposal and to tackle piracy, and I think watermarking is one of the most promising. And indeed, we have seen some good results from it. But I don't want to underestimate. I don't want anyone to underestimate. Perhaps it's not helpful to Brad for me to say this, but underestimate the challenges that implementing watermarking across the industry, you know, brings about. You have to have a very secure platform to use it properly. The more complicated your platform is, and the more points of distribution you have, the harder it is to utilize. We're in a game of cat and mouse with the sophisticated pirates who are out there all the time finding new ways to circumvent watermarking. And what I find that watermarking does is it knocks out the unsophisticated pirate, but you end up with clusters of very sophisticated pirates who are still there pirating your content. And because, you know, an internet stream can proliferate kind of an unlimited number of times on the internet, you actually only need a couple of streams to supply, you know, a huge number of streams into the ecosystem. And the other thing is, for a lot of broadcasters, you know, different types of broadcasters and distributors' business models, watermarking is a real challenge because they have multiple distribution partners. They don't necessarily have a direct relationship with their customer, which is necessary in order to kill a subscription in real time, which lies at the heart of the effectiveness of watermarking. So while I am definitely an advocate of watermarking, and I think technology like this is really important, and you know, I support all vendors who are out there developing this technology, and I encourage people to use it. I don't want anyone to underestimate the challenges that are still presented by it, and the sorts of things that an organization needs to go through and consider in order to use this sort of thing effectively. You know, and I think we also have to do other things in addition to watermarking. We need to do enforcement. We need better laws around notice and takedown to get better compliance from internet companies. We need to partner with internet companies and get better support from them as well. We need to do things like blocking. You know, in lots of countries now, we're getting orders requiring ISPs to block their customers from accessing streams, but in many places this is still in its infancy. I think only through a combination of all of these things, and the industry also looking at the way it's structured, you know, this is the way we're ultimately going to be able to tackle piracy. But it's complicated. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time.
Hernan, I'd like to see with some of you, I'd like to take the main actors of this value chain that I think, are agreeing, all of them are somehow impacted. But I'd like to see each of them individually. So let's take the pay TV operators as one of the key actors here, the distributors. What do you think their role is? When you think, I know your experience comes more from the TV networks, and you can also perhaps have a look at from their side, but let's start by looking at the pay TV operators themselves. And I know this discussion is about online piracy, but these days there's no much difference because pay TV operators are in many ways also distributing their channel, their content through online alternatives. Let's start with the pay TV operators, and then we'll look at the rest of the actors.
I'm gonna get to this, but let me say this. The ballpark number that we have for LATAM, it's on the 3.5 billions US dollars. That is the impact. So it's a lot of money.
That's annually.
And it's Sorry?
Per year, that's the figure per year.
Per year, correct, per year for the whole video industry. So it's a lot of harm that is being produced, and it's everyone's problem. And this is my main message here. You go from the athletes to the teams to the championship tournament or league. Then you go to the federation. The federation goes up to the agency that sells it, then up to the broadcaster, the OTT, and whoever is a client on the syndication side. Mm-hmm. And all of them, all of those stakeholders on the value chain has something to say and something to do to avoid the pain, to avoid the piracy, to help prevent piracy. One of the things that we learn on the Brasileirão side is that we need to get together with the league. In that case, it's the federation and the clubs. Closer as possible with them. We are international right holders, but that doesn't mean that we don't care about the domestic threat, the domestic piracy, because as Cameron mentioned, the piracy industry is the global industry that exists when distributing content. So if you don't fight on every corner of the world, you're losing the battle, and that's part of what we are aiming at doing. So we cannot fight alone on the international territory, talking about Brasileirão. We need to fight not only outside Brazil, but also within Brazil, with the local right holders that owns those rights. But then you have some clubs that has its own OTT, so there are no right holder. You have to get them on as well into the same fight, because otherwise you will have some weak chain on the value chain that will be the one most impacted. So how you get everyone together, and how you, when we talk about efforts and resources, we are talking about money, how you make everyone aware of we all have to put efforts, money, resources into this basket to combat piracy is something that in the region we are far from being very successful. We are far from being very successful. And I think that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have to look on what the big leagues and most successful leagues in the world have done in the past. I mentioned English Premier League, La Liga. Those leagues have been able to be very successful, implementing a lot of resources, and we have to take those best practices in place.
Guilherme, time goes quickly. We were approaching the end of the panel. There's probably one or two questions. Let's see if we have time to cover them. Guilherme, when you think specifically of the OTT platform doing live sports, is there anything in particular that you think you can do or you should do to help fight online piracy?
I agree with Cameron and Hernan. It's an industry-wide problem. The industry as a whole needs to get together and work on solutions, from educating fans to legal actions, to regulation, because all of these is going to be helping the solution. Because at the end of the day, it's the pirates, they are always going to be one step ahead. You build watermarking, they're going to be trying to build a solution or a workaround. If you, in our case, if we work with the platforms and we're working with them, what they will do is they will use the platforms to showcase and address the real source of the pirate signal. And that's the main issue. If we work together clubs, rights holders, governing bodies, broadcasters, distributors, even the athletes, because at the end of the day, this impacts them as well. Because if the distributor is able to pay more for the rights, this is when I'm going to the athletes. So it's a industry-wide issue that needs to be tackled together.
And Roberto, I think it was interesting. Cameron did a very good review of the different channels for online piracy, and he mentioned social media as a big issue, websites themselves, which you can see ranking high in services such as Alexa or similar web. He mentioned the IPTV subscriptions. There's one that I don't think I heard, which is peer-to-peer piracy. Is that a separate part of the element? Are you familiar with it? Do you see it as a separate channel for piracy?
No, basically it's part of the whole package of piracy that you see over there, because it's peer-to-peer or whatever, it's just channels of distribution, but at the end it affects you also. It's very easy to do that peer-to-peer. But I just wanted to address one thing that totally agree with Cameron in the place, but I wanted to address it to our area, to Latin America, for example. And unfortunately, in Latin America, many governments don't have the regulation entities to help into these matters. For example, in Mexico, it's a strong institute, an Instituto Federal de Telecomunicaciones, that manages and jumps and tries to jump over these situations. But because of the legal times it takes to develop solutions for this and everything, it's way behind in things. And once you address one of these problems alone, it could take you years into making a legal case about these situations in Mexico alone, per se. Another thing that it's been affected, and adding to what Hernan was saying in the chain over there, it also affects the sponsors, but in a different way, because in the traditional method of selling rights and getting income from the broadcasters, you have exclusivities that now it's very hard to have an exclusivity because everybody's accessing it with piracy. And the sponsors use this situation as a way of having leverage in the negotiation with the owners of the rights. So that, because now the cake of the investment of sponsoring is being slashed into many pieces that were not there before, because as you say, some of these pirates are actually getting some of those pieces of advertising. So one of the things that we're using, for example, in our OTTs for BAM Sports now, and we developed another one for example, next in a couple of weeks, there's going to be the first auto racing major worldwide event in Mexico after the pandemic. That is La Carrera Panamericana. And our company, we're going to be the hosts of this and everything. And the situation, first things, we want to deliver it for everybody over there. But we use watermarking in that. But since we know that from the origin, many people is going to share it legally or illegally in their social media, etc. What we are doing with the sponsors is to bring them into the content per se, as way before it was done now, to generate product placement into the feeds to get some income that we were not getting over now. No.
Thanks for that, Roberto. Very quickly, I want to end. Brad, we have probably 1 minute tops.
Okay, sure.
Let us know if you think we're actually going to be able to end with this at some point, or actually online piracy in sports is something that we're going to have to learn to live with it and try to minimize it as much as we can. What's your view? And let's finish with that.
It's here. It's not going away. You have to stay ahead of the pirates, of the pirate services. Everybody needs to come together and do their fair share. As I said earlier, the folks producing the events with those folks that are distributing those events, and they need to each do their fair share. And that's where Hernan came and talked about coming together. And there's a lot of different watermarking, forensic watermarking types of services out there. We produced a white paper. It's available on our website on the attacks of watermarking. I would encourage folks to go get it and look at it, because piracy is here to stay. There's new technologies coming out each and every day to try to compromise what you all are trying to do and what we're doing to fight in this. But if you don't stay ahead of it, there's no reason to, I mean, the pirates are just going to continue to have the #1 listing on the internet on where to go out and get things. So I would highly encourage everybody to do their fair share. Let's have the discussion. It's an open discussion. This was a wonderful panel that gave a lot of ideas, but it really raised a lot more questions as to the amount of revenues that are being stolen from the folks that are the rightful owners and those that are producing and the owners of the teams. So we need to come together as a community. We need to have that discussion. We're here to be the trusted advisor. Love to have those conversations. And Juan Pablo and everybody else, thank you for allowing me to be on this great panel.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, everyone. I think you've met our expectations. Thank you for all the advice, your views. Thanks to our attendees, and we're going to be starting our next session in less than 10 minutes. So thanks.
Excellent.
Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.